One sec. Perfect. I think it started to record.
Great.
Brilliant. Welcome to the podcast, Brian.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And for those who are listening, Brian, I believe you're based in Greystones at the moment in Ireland.
I am. I was just swimming in the Cove in Greystones, and I was in the sauna in Fodsale saunas, which I frequent. And I live 5 minutes from the beach, which is a blessing.
Nice. And we've done, I think, 4 coaching sessions together now. So for those that maybe don't know Brian, I'll just do a quick intro on. I found some things online on ChatGPT. Brian is a professional coach who operates through Essential Training. Is that still correct, or is that?
Yeah, that's my dad's business. I still represent Essential Training a lot of the time. I also have my own business called Solace Wellness Coaching, where I still do one-on-one coaching, corporate workshops, but also there's more of a heavy emphasis on the wellness side of things, and that brings in my yoga and meditation teaching. But I still operate under Essential Training a lot of the time.
Brilliant. And you offering both individual and team coaching sessions.
Correct.
His work focuses on helping clients unlock their own inner wisdom through conversation, deep listening, visualization, and open-ended questions.
That's it.
Brilliant. And background, trained coaching training, trained with Ericsson Coaching International and affiliated with the International Coaching Federation, ICF, or
Yeah.
Approach and influences. His methodology is rooted in solution-focused coaching, neuroscience, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and positive psychology. Global and local experience. Brian has lived and worked in countries including Spain, Nepal, Mexico, Canada, and Ireland. And you mentioned already you were coaching alongside your father in the past, Brian Kingston, at Essential Training. Academic background, he holds an undergraduate and master's degrees in philosophy and psychology. His master's thesis explored the Camino de Santiago as a rite of passage to the self in contemporary society, which aligns with his coaching focus on personal growth and journey. Diverse talents, a former high-level rugby player representing Ireland under 19 and under 20, and part of the under 20 Six Nations winning team in 2010. Brian is also a published poet and spoken word performer, which is incredible. You're the first high-level rugby player that's a published poet and spoken word performer that I've ever met. So that's amazing.
I'm the first that I've ever met as well. Actually, I was watching the recent Lions podcast, the Lions series on YouTube, where they were following along the Lions, and the Scottish hooker or prop. There was one episode where he was writing a poem about what it's like to be a lion in order to help motivate and kind of galvanize the team. And he's a naturalized Scottish player. He's originally from South Africa. So it was so interesting and amazing and inspiring to see this big, thick South African front row writing poetry. It was just beautiful, and I'm so glad they shone a spotlight on it. So there's more out there. There's more out there that have that intersection between sport and poetry.
Yeah, that's incredible, and it also goes on to say what coaching service you provide. Individual coaching, you offer one-to-one coaching, whether walking, over coffee, workshops, or online, to help clients gain a fresh perspective on their lives and work. Team and group coaching, which we already talked about, facilitates coaching for corporate teams, nonprofits, family businesses, and other group settings, helping teams collaborate, lead, and grow. Executive and leadership coaching through Essential Training. Brian, alongside Brian Kingston, and you mentioned your new offering supports executives, CEOs, business owners, and transformation teams with leadership skills, development, and coaching interventions, and thought leadership and content. He contributes to Essential Training's blog, sharing insights on team roles and dynamics to conference reflections, drawing from tools like the Belbin model. Forgive me if I'm wrong in saying it. That was just a quick search.
Yeah, that's all great. Yeah, that's all great. We use Belbin a lot. It's a behavioral assessment where people can understand more about their behavioral styles at work and within a team dynamic. And it can be an amazing tool to help people to kind of reflect on their behaviors and what's working and what needs to be worked on. So yeah, that's all true. Yeah.
Happy days. And I'd love to know a bit about what fascinates me and is how you got into all of this, and maybe growing up, your background. Was you grew up in Dublin, or was it?
Yeah, so great question. Well, it was interesting. I was in Blackrock College the other day, but where we both went, and I was giving a talk on leadership to the house captains. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, well, Blackrock College is a school in Dublin in Ireland, very famous for being a prestigious rugby school. So they've won, I think, the most amount of cups by a long way in the Leinster Senior Cup cycle, and it's basically a conveyor belt for international talent. Like, so many amazing Irish and Leinster and more rugby players have come from Blackrock, like Brian O'Driscoll, Caelan Doris. And I think that's why I'm telling the story, is because I was going back to give a talk on leadership, and I got to interview Caelan Doris, who's the Irish captain at the moment of the rugby team. And it was a beautiful kind of full circle moment, because it was like a sliding door moment. Like, I didn't go down the rugby path, even though that's where I felt like I was going as a kid, and that's where I thought I wanted to go. And then I was sitting there with the current Ireland captain, and he was mentioning how both his parents are psychologists, and it always, when he was a kid, he thought they were mad. He just wanted to have normal parents, but the older he gets, the more he appreciates them. And that's how I feel about my parents. My dad has been an executive coach for 30 years, kind of in Ireland, where people didn't know what that was, and still people don't really know what it is. Some people don't really know what it is. And so he was doing work helping companies and teams to be more of their best self and bring out more of their best self. And my mum had gotten into holistic therapies, so Reiki, spirituality, tapping into the soul, and alternative healing methods through her own healing journey. And so I felt sometimes like a bit of a fish out of water, because I'd been raised by a coach and a Reiki healer, two people that had gone on their own journeys of healing and self-understanding. So the house we were raised in felt very different to a lot of the other houses of my friends, in what we talked about at the dinner table: deep philosophical discussions, kind of countercultural perceptions on how to live life in a healthy, authentic way. It was a very safe place in lots of ways, and for lots of my friends, they liked to come to our house because I think they felt like they could talk about lots of things. So it was interesting hearing Caelan say that's how he felt about his parents, because I felt like that about my parents too. I felt very different in Blackrock, having a dad as an executive coach and a mum who was into holistic therapies and alternative therapies. But the older I've gotten, the more I have cherished that upbringing, and the more I'm finding my own path in that upbringing. And I think that's kind of embodied by being a yoga and a meditation teacher and a coach. I like to bring both elements of what my parents taught me into my work and my life. So yeah, went to Blackrock College. Went to Oatlands in Stillorgan first, and then in third class, which is about 8 years old in Ireland, went to Willow Park, which is the primary feeder school of Blackrock College, and was there until leaving school. Spent 1 year in Trinity College doing philosophy and sociology as my degree, and then transferred down to University College Cork, finished my degree there, and did a 1 year master's. And that's where I decided to stop playing rugby, because I realized that I was probably playing for other people rather than myself, because it was the thing to do in school. My parents were rugby obsessed. My dad played. And actually, I realized I'm a bit more of a free spirit than team sports allows for. And it took me a while to figure that out, because I was doing so well in playing rugby. It was hard to leave, because, playing Irish under 19s, under 20s, a lot of my friends or peers would have bitten my arm off to be where I was, whereas I wasn't happy there at all, and felt this kind of obligation to be going down this path, because everyone around me was saying, oh, this is great, well done, you're so successful. Whereas inside, it's not what I wanted to be doing at all. Another rugby training session, another weight session, being weighed on the weighing scales to, are you the right weight? How's your body fat percentage? I kind of just felt like cattle in a cage. And it suits a lot of people, and I think power to them, but it didn't really suit me. So I decided to go on a different path. And that's where I walked the Camino de Santiago, which was a real opening for me into completely other ways of living my life. And that's what I ended up doing my master's thesis on, because I'd given up playing rugby. I shaved my head. I got a tattoo. It was kind of my rebellion. And I walked for 30 days across the north of Spain, ended up in Santiago and stayed there for 2 months and started going to Spanish school and volunteered in a hostel, which is kind of a common thing that people do after they finish the Camino. And met people from all over the world, found amazing commonality in people from many different backgrounds, and saw that we were all going through somewhat of a transformation in life. For me, it was leaving one tribe and not knowing where my next tribe was going to be, and leaving one way of life and not knowing what my next way of life was going to be. But seeing people from Canada, Australia, all over Europe, men, women, people in teenagers to 50 and 60 years old, we were all just pilgrims with a backpack. It was a very leveling experience. And in sociology, in sociological thought, with rites of passage, there's a concept called communitas, where people who are going through a rite of passage together form a very strong bond, because that bond is done on a very authentic level. It doesn't matter if you're a banker or a lawyer or a solicitor or a doctor, or you're black or white or brown, or you have lots of money or no money. We're all wearing similar clothes. We all have a backpack. We're all walking in the same direction, sleeping in the same places, more or less. So it's a very leveling experience. And through the metronomic, regular feeling of walking, and lots of time side by side with people, it allows for very deep conversation very quickly. So I formed these very strong bonds with people and found these commonalities with people all over the world. And I felt so free and so available to be myself. The challenge was coming home and people saying, "Oh, how was your holiday?" And I was like, "I'm a completely transformed person. What do you mean my holiday?" And I became a bit evangelical about, "Oh, this is so amazing and I feel so different." But I realized it was falling on deaf ears because people had no frame of reference, especially most of my friends who were 22, 23 in college. So I was doing my master's and I was like, I want to understand this more. And I took this amazing class by a sociology professor called Kieran Keohane. And it was called The Pathology of Contemporary Civilization. And the central tenets of that course were that the basic structure of modern Western neoliberal society isn't conducive to health within the individual, which I found so relieving because I felt so anxious, so depressed, so lonely. And learning this course and reading all these books from these sociologists, they were saying things like, well, we've lost the fabric of our society. Our institutions are crumbling. People aren't believing in the church as much as they did. I was raised in a Catholic school, Catholic society. Church numbers were way down. There have been so many abuses from the Catholic Church, from the mother and child homes to abuse of children in the care of the state and the church. I think people lost a lot of faith in the church. And then we had just gone through the crash of 2009, 2010. So that whole American dream of finance and freedom was kind of crumbling for my generation as I saw it. And so what was left in the rubble of all that? And there's a lot of isolation and dislocation for individuals. And I found such solace in reading about that and studying that course, because it made me realize that maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe this isn't fertile soil for me to grow. Now, what I've learned in the years since is that it's an intertwining of both. It may not be my fault that I'm in this soil that may not be fertile, but it's my responsibility to give that soil the fruits that it needs and the compost that it needs and the water that it needs, and maybe go place it somewhere that's more conducive to my health. So that's kind of been the journey of my last 15 years, is kind of reconciling that high performance rugby self that person that wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps and be a coach, the spiritual side of Reiki and yoga and meditation, and then how do I mar all that together, if that's the right word, mesh all that together and make that something that's viable in this world, this capitalist system we're living in. How can I earn a living doing something I'm passionate about? And I'm still on that journey for sure. But it's kind of landed me what I'm doing now, self-employed as a coach and a facilitator and a yoga and meditation teacher. So I'll take a breath because there's a lot there. And maybe you have some questions or thoughts.
Thank you for sharing, Brian. I appreciate everything you mentioned, and a few things came to mind when you were speaking. Firstly is the way that you went from an environment like a rugby environment, Ireland under 18s, under 19s, and I think you mentioned you won in the Ireland under 19, under 20s, under 20 Six Nations winning team in 2010, and you've gone on to, and now you mentioned you went on to follow your father's footsteps in coaching. But I love the fact, and I think we touched upon it before with the South African player. I'd love to know how you've integrated. Was poetry and spoken word always a part of your life through that journey, or is it something that has come into your life recently? I'd love to know.
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot in what you just said there. I mean, first of all, the rugby environment traditionally, and I think it might be changing now, but traditionally it was that locker room, all male, sometimes chauvinistic, sometimes toxic masculine environment. And I felt not safe in that environment at all to be myself, because you're getting slagged. I always felt like there was someone out to get me, or, what might have sounded like an inane comment to someone else, I took really personally. And what I've realized is, those environments can often not be like one of psychological safety. So of course I didn't feel like I could be my authentic self. Now, luckily I was good at rugby. So it meant I was getting picked for lots of teams. We won the junior cup, the senior cup, which were the whole world at that age for us in at that time. And it kind of helped me survive, because it was kind of a lion's den, Blackrock College, 200 boys, high performance place where it's not just rugby, but lots of sports and the plays and debating. There's just this kind of mentality of your parents are paying a lot of money for you to be here. You got to make the most of it. Now, how poetry came into my life, I don't exactly know, but I do remember at 15, I was the captain of our junior cup team. And I remember hearing a Muhammad Ali poem in one of his speeches, fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee. I'm so mean, I make medicine sick. Last night, I murdered a rock. I injured a stone. I hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean, I make medicine sick. So he had this amazing way of interweaving his strong, masculine, dominant fighter mentality with this delicate, dancing feet, erudite, creative person. And he did that really well. So I was really inspired by that when I was 15. I wrote a poem about our rugby team. And then when we won the senior cup when I was in sixth year, we all had to give a speech when we were eating dinner afterwards. And there was lots of parents and staff and students there. And for my speech, I wrote a poem about the whole team. And it was kind of like making a little joke about each member of the team, which is probably not what I'd write now. But it was such a beautiful moment where I felt like I was being seen for who I was. And I scored the winning try in the senior cup final. But actually saying that poem, there was more exhilaration in that than there was in scoring that try. Right. And so that planted a seed within me that I've kind of I've been pulling on that thread ever since, because it was just so exhilarating to be up there and reading this thing that I'd written and people laughing at it and cheering at it. And I didn't really perform again until I was writing my master's thesis about the Camino. And I felt so changed And I was back living in my parents' house in Wicklow, writing my thesis. At this stage, I had been to Nepal with a charity organization that my dad got involved in. And I just felt so changed. And all my friends were going out to nightclubs and bars every weekend. And I just wanted something different. So I Googled open mic night randomly. And I went to a thing called the Monday Echo in Dublin, ran in the International Bar on Wicklow Street and down in the basement. And it was this incredible place of creativity. And the first night I went, there was musicians, poets, storytellers. And one poet got up. His name's John Cummins. He now has a band called Shakalak. And he's from Crumlin. And he's got this really long beard, really long hair. And he talks with the really Crumlin accent, like, do you know what I mean? But then he got up and he did this poem. And oh my God, he just had everyone eating out of his hands with this flowy, rappy, storytelling accent, like. And I was just enamored and amazed. And I was driving home in my red Seat Ibiza, and I had to pull in on the N11 because I was so inspired I had to write something. And that was water on that seed. So I ended up going there every Monday night and started was performing my own stuff all the time. And then I got sick and tired of driving into town every week. So I was working in a pizza restaurant at the time. The Duggans, Connor and Nicola Duggan, own the Platform Pizza in Bray, and they also own the Harbour Bar. And I asked them, would you ever be interested in like doing spoken word poetry? And they're like, yeah. It took me 5 or 6 weeks to actually get going. But then we started a thing called the Circle Sessions, which was in the conservatory of the Harbour Bar. And it was a place where people could come and perform anything, really. Stories, poems, songs, excerpts from plays. And we had amazing people there. We had like a band called Heroes in Hiding, who I absolutely love. Grammy-nominated singer Ava McMahon, who's a very close friend of mine. John Cummins came, which was a very full circle moment in the Circle Sessions. I think my second cousin, Anne Tannum, who's a really amazing poet and a coach as well, was there. Just amazing people performing. We went to Electric Picnic and Body and Soul with lots of performer tickets. So that was kind of my journey into creativity, and I've been writing ever since, on and off. But yeah, I have 3 books on Amazon. But my real passion is performing my poems to a live audience or to friends and family or at events. I've been a celebrant for 2 weddings, and I like to interweave poetry into. It's been interesting now that a lot of my friends are all getting married. I've been asked a good few times to do poems for weddings, like my cousin as well. And I think as we get older, the poignancy of poetry is starting to sink into us a little bit more as we get a bit more life experience and start to see the intricacy of life and how temporary life is and how people get married and have babies and get sick. And poetry can be such a solace, and it has been for me, especially when I listen to it. Reading sometimes, but especially when I listen to it or watch it. So yeah, that was kind of my journey into creativity.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Brian. And just for the audience listening, you played fly half. So that's number 10. And if anyone doesn't know, rugby union, that would be equivalent of a quarterback. I know the college football in America is about to start soon, and it was on in the Viva Stadium yesterday. So if anyone's listening from maybe around the world in different places, Brian used to make probably a lot of decisions.
Yeah, you're definitely like a de facto leader on the pitch, and you're trying to call the shots. And now at that age in rugby and with Blackrock College, things were quite formulaic. But yeah, you're kind of a fulcrum between the forwards who are big and the backs who are small and nimble. And yeah, you also take the kicks, there's a bit of pressure in that. So yeah, there's a bit of responsibility and leadership there for sure. And I loved that role, really did. But I wasn't in love with the game as a lot of people are. And I think as you need to be in order to go far. Like I remember Richie Murphy, who was our coach in Leinster at the time, ringing me and asking me, how'd you get on the weekend? Like, what did you think of the game? And what defense were the other team playing? And I was like, I have no idea. And I didn't care. And I knew in that moment, and I think he knew in that moment, that there was a ceiling that I was going to reach. in rugby, because in order to be successful at anything, you've got to care. You've got to be watching the games at the weekends, be talking about rugby, be interested. Now, that's how I am about many other things in my life now, like coaching, like emotional intelligence, like poetry, like travel, like learning languages, which is why I see success in those areas. And, you know, I remember my dad saying how important it is to have that to be successful. And I felt inadequate because I didn't have it with rugby. Now, what I've realized is, oh, that wasn't inadequacy. That was just rugby wasn't my thing. It was my path to find my thing, or my things. And that's been a really nice part of coming into adulthood, which I think is still I'm in process of at 34, is finding, oh, I have lots of interests and skills. And I'm not anything. I'm not I work as a coach and a yoga and meditation teacher and a poet, and I love to travel. But if anybody ever calls me something, I get a little, oof, you know, I do a lot of things, but I think for all of us, we're a lot more and a lot less than the labels we put on ourselves, you know. And I feel very free when I don't put a label on myself. So yeah, I played out half and a bit of fullback.
And I'd love to know, Brian, you mentioned that you got to a point in rugby where you thought that it was, after the call with Richie, I believe you mentioned it was time, you knew that you were long term, this wasn't your thing. Has that happened more than once, or is there a certain thought, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's happened with many things in my life. I mean, then for that Six Nations where we won, I played 3 games, but I got dropped for the last 2. And our coach was Alan Clark. And I remember in the meeting with him, I burst into tears. And it wasn't so much the disappointment, but I knew all my family had booked tickets to Wales to go to watch the match. And I knew I'd have to tell them 3 or 4 days before that I wasn't going to be playing. And I felt like such a failure and such a disappointment. And in that moment, I also realized how much I was playing for other people rather than playing for myself. And I believe that in order to achieve success or fulfillment or joy or happiness or creativity, we've got to do it for ourselves first. And I think that's whatever it is, whether it's international nonprofit work, charity work. I believe there's something called enlightened selfishness where, like, I get so much out of coaching people. I've said this to you in our coaching sessions. I mean, you thank me at the end and I accept that graciously. And I also get a lot from holding that space, from reflecting on my life as the person brings something up for me. So I get a lot out of it too. Yeah. And so getting dropped in that moment was also a big realization that, okay, maybe this isn't for me. But there was still something in me fighting that. And I went down to UCC, University College Cork, on a scholarship. And at that stage, I remember waking up, going for a nap before training at 6 or 7 p.m. after being a full day in college, and feeling intense anxiety in my stomach, knots in my stomach, dread, having gone to the bathroom multiple times, just wanting to sleep because I had no energy. And when I look back at that, I realize that I was learning that I was living a life not in line to how I wanted to, but I thought that I was not good enough. I thought I wasn't strong enough. I thought I wasn't passionate enough. And I was fighting against myself to go to training every week. And I was dreading it. Like on a Friday or on a Saturday after a match, I'd be dreading training on a Tuesday night. So it got really intense. And this is where I coach a lot of my clients on somatics, on listening to our body. Like, I wish somebody back then had said, yeah, that's your body giving you a message. Tell me what's that message? Oh, I don't want to be here. I don't like what I'm doing. I remember going to a counselor in college and she said, God, yeah, you're experiencing lots of anxiety and mental health stuff. Let's get you on medication before your college exam just to get you through this period. And I was like, whoa, we just had one session. You're the first person I've ever told I'm feeling this way. And you're going straight to medication. I'm like, ooh. Now, on the other hand, I remember telling my dad at 15, I have this weird feelings in my tummy, like butterflies, but they don't feel good. And he was like, just go to the gym. You'll be grand. No, there's something deeper here. So it's taken me a while to kind of figure that out. And I still now, since doing my yoga teacher training at the start of this year, it's going to give me a lot more connection to my body and the messages of my body when I'm tired, when I'm stressed, when I'm not aligned, when I'm around someone that's not safe. My body gives me messages. When I don't feel comfortable to myself, do I need to pull myself out of that environment? How do I protect myself? And they were some of the steps that showed me that I was not on the path that I needed to be. And I was so unconscious going through it that then I had to take drastic measures. Go walk the Camino, leave everything you have behind and just pack a bag and go walk for a month. Or go travel to Latin America for 8 months and go backpacking, or go move to Vancouver, live there for 5 years. There were kind of drastic changes I needed to make because it was out of panic and misalignment that I was just like, fuck this. And, you know, I'm glad I did those things. They were amazing experiences. But when I look back, I see how disconnected I was to myself. And now I'm so militant about who I spend my time with, the language I use, what I do for work, because I want to maintain this peace and joy and creativity that I felt and love, and I want it to expand. So if I'm around someone that's talking shit about someone else, I'm like, I'll call it out, and if they don't change, I'll leave, because that is toxic. That gets into your bones. And I was running a workshop in a company recently, a large financial institution, and I take the new grads for a day as part of their week-long induction training. And we do things like teach them how to juggle. So we learn how to learn. In neuro-linguistic programming, there's the 4 stages of learning. I take them through that. I teach them about active listening, communication skills, empathy, open-ended questions, tools that will hopefully benefit them in their career in the company, but also going forward. We do meditation techniques. We help them connect to company values. We've done 12 or 13 of these now over the last year and a half. And 2 workshops ago, I really noticed in the room that when I asked questions or when we were doing exercises, people were really slow to share. They were really slow to get creative. And then I realized in between when we took coffee breaks or when we were kind of hustling to set up an exercise, people were fucking making little jabs at each other, making little jabby, offhand comments, funny jokes that were actually putting people down. And I saw in real time then how one red sock in your white wash can make everything discolored. And this person who was unconscious of their behavior was actually creating a not safe psychological environment in this workshop. And what made it so apparent was that we had done 13 of these, and I saw the insights people were having and the energy in the room and the laughter in the room. And this was just stilted, quelched energy. And we made a rule in that room that day. If you're going to say something, if you're going to fill the air with space, made it either a question or it's encouraging or it's adding something to the room. It's not tearing someone else down or making an offhand comment about someone's personality or about someone's behavior. And so I espouse that, and I do that in my workshops because I've seen how I personally can be of detriment if I allow myself to be in those environments for too long. And that's amounted to leaving WhatsApp groups, leaving jobs. And I think this is to fully answer your question full circle. Many times in my life, I've gotten that message from my body, and I wish I would have listened to it sooner. And that's what I do for my clients now, is I try to create a safe space where I help them listen to themselves sooner, show up a mirror to them sooner, being like, so this is what you're telling me. How does that sound to you? And then when they hear it talked out from a different perspective, then they have an opportunity to change it or to add to it or to go, oh, is that what's going on inside my head? Is that what's going on in my relationships? And that's the beauty of creating that space as a coach, is it's this cherished space of non-judgment where we believe the answer is in you, the client. And our job is to maybe ask questions, have a bit of fun, do some exercises that allows you to find the inner wisdom that you have within yourself that you haven't been able to see. And, they use that analogy in therapy. We can't see the back of our own head. So a coach will allow you to show you what's there. It's like, that friend that says you got spinach in your teeth. They're the best friends because you know that they'll tell you. Or that friend that will also say, you look fabulous today. You have such a great energy, or I love the way you do this. That's kind of the position we have as coaches. And it's such a privilege. But like, to answer your question, I've been in sales roles where it was the best job of my life for 2 years. And then, the company culture is changing. We went public on the stock exchange in Toronto, and money started to be squeezed, and customers started to be squeezed, and we started to be squeezed. And then I was so confused how my body was giving me all these messages of stress and anxiety, and I was losing my sleep. But I was like, I love this job. I love this company. But actually, a lot was changing. And I worked with a coach to help me kind of get out of that environment. And that's inevitably what kind of forced me to go do my coaching training 5 years ago. A friend of mine said, if you don't do your coaching training soon, I'm not going to be friends with you anymore. It was such a beautiful, compassionate thing that he said in a compassionate way, because I'd been talking about doing this for years and I had taken no action on it. And I had just that beautiful moment with my friend, Kevin Hegarty, I'll give him a shout out, where that's the beauty of friendship. And I have a few of those people in my life that I cherish, that will support me and love me unconditionally, and will also call me out on my bullshit. They're the people that I want in my life. And they're few and far between, sadly. I'm finding more and more of them. And sometimes I'm finding, people in my life have been in my life for a very long time aren't always necessarily those people. And someone I might have met a couple of months ago could actually be that person. So that's how I try to live my life. That's what I found works for me. And that's part of what I help my clients do.
Thanks for sharing, Brian. I just want to take a moment, because what you said there was something that is important for me as well as maybe the listener. Is you mentioned a number of times listening to your body, and it's something that I haven't done in the past, and it's led me down roads where maybe it could have been better by just not listening, and warning signals, whether that, like, I don't want to go into gut feelings maybe, or just when my body tells me it's excited. I know from going from the sauna over the last 3-4 years due to health reasons, getting a recommendation from a functional medicine doctor about the sauna, I've noticed now, and gaining a bit of weight, that my body, when it's excited, it really lights up. It really knows before my brain knows. It sort of, it's there. It's excited. It wants to pursue it wants to sing the song, or it wants to listen to the music, or it wants to dance, or it wants to just have fun, or it wants to tired. It wants to relax. The body wants to relax. And I was always wondering, and I won't get into it too much, but having some mental health difficulties over the last number of years, maybe not listening to my body could have been a contributor to it, among maybe a number of other things. But yeah,
I think that's beautifully said. Like, a contributor to it is a great way to put it, because I don't know what contributed to it, but I know in my own experience, over a long time not listening to my body. Like, I was living in Vancouver for 5 years. I was in an amazing relationship. We had a dog. We lived together. I was starting my coaching business, and I started to wake up in the middle of the night. And then the period of me waking up increased, where I had full-on insomnia for about 6 weeks, and I felt like a full-on zombie. And what was happening was my body was starting to tell me, you need to go back to Ireland. You need to go. This relationship isn't right for you. And I fought that decision for 6 weeks, and it almost broke me. I started having suicidal thoughts because I wasn't sleeping. I was so anxious. I was so not myself. I could find no joy or creativity or love in my life. Me fighting this decision just drained me, where then it became so drastic that I had to make a change. And that's that was really sad that I had to go through that. But the gift of that is I can fucking smell that now in myself and in others. And I work with an insurance company. They recommend my coaching service as part of their benefits packages to their clients. And the insurance agent who I work with, he called it, your work is preclinical. And I love that phrase because I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. And I really believe in therapy. I have my own psychotherapist who I go to. I go to the doctor, all these things. But I also do yoga. I also do meditation. I was also on medication for my mental health before. I'm not anymore. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I've had experiences with plant medicine. I've gone on my own journey of healing that has interwoven the East and the West and the alternative and the traditional Western medicine. And listening to my body has been a big element of that. And I'll share with you two examples. One guy I met in the sauna recently, he said, his name's Kieran, he said, after a few months in the sauna, his back, he was recommended to have a back operation for a slip disc or herniated disc or something. The sauna cured it. Him going to the sauna and relaxing and the anti-inflammatory properties. 3 or 4 months going to the sauna, he didn't have to get back surgery. But what he also said was his kids were asked him, Dad, why don't you shout at us as much anymore? The treatment he was giving to his body was having so many of trickle-down effects on his life and his relationships and to himself. And what you mentioned about my body feels it and that joy, and I want to sing the song and I want to follow my intuition and I want to feel alive. That's what I want to help my clients do. That's what I help my clients do. Let's help find that and let's pull on that thread. What things do you do that you find yourself losing track of time? Let's go do that. Let's fill your cup. And out of that blossoms beauty, blossoms relationships, blossoms work, blossoms that feeling of getting up in the morning and looking forward to things. That's my belief, that people can live a life that's meaningful and valuable to themselves. And that's what I help people to do. And I was volunteering on the Happy Pear Farm, an organic farm near Greystones, and I was working with Lulu, who works on the farm. And I do it a few days a week because I love getting my hands in the soil. I love regenerative agriculture. I love learning about nature and the natural processes of things. And she said, wow, it must be hard doing the work that you do because you must have to practice what you preach and you must have to then go live a life authentic to yourself. And I was like, yeah, I get to. When I am part of this musical at the end of September, I'm not just doing this for me, but I'm doing this to practice what I preach to my clients. Like, I find joy in singing and dancing and performing. I have to tap into my creativity because that's what I help people do. So it's a complete flip on its head of, oh yeah, I get to do all these things. Like, we're recording this podcast on a Sunday. Absolutely, I said yes to this. Because to me, that separation between what I do for work and how I live my life has become sometimes irrecognizable. Now, that's when it's more important to learn how to switch off. Because when we're so passionate about what we do, that's when it becomes even more important to switch off. So I have to be very careful to not overdo it, because what I do find, I believe what I do is meaningful. But that's a great problem to have. And Tim Ferriss says this: the more successful you get, the more you learn how to have to say no. And we've talked about this. A big part of my journey is the boundaries that I set, who I allow into my life, what kind of conversations I allow having around me, what type of media I consume. Stuff my parents were telling me for years, but now I'm starting to see it more for myself as I become more sensitive, in the best way of that term, in being that kind of tuning fork for myself and for my clients. I'm realizing, oh, I can't put that into my body, or I can't listen to that shit if I want to maintain this sobriety, equanimity, peace, purpose. So the boundary part for me and that's where you have to, like, be the enlightened warrior sometimes and go no, or go fuck off. Or yeah, I was in a bar recently and a guy grabbed me by the balls and I punched him in the face because I got sexually assaulted, which this is like a big bomb to drop at the end of our conversation. But the more I learn about myself, the more I realize how important the boundaries are. And I'm not proud that I did that, but you know, to me, it's like an embodiment of we've got to fucking protect ourselves because no one else is going to. Parents, friends, siblings. At the end of the day, we got to look after ourselves. So that's an honor and a privilege to do. And my dad always used to say this to me growing up. He's like, your body's a temple. And he was saying this in the context of being a rugby player. And I'd be throwing my eyes up to heaven. I was like, why is my body a temple when then I'm being asked to go and fucking destroy it by being smashed into by these big, massive lads every weekend? But now I see what he means. Yeah, this is where your soul resides. So look after it. So to give your soul the best chance of becoming liberated in this lifetime or the next. So that's where I do have more care for my body and my surroundings and the people in my life. And that's a spiritual work, I believe. That's where the work of Ram Dass, Eckhart Tolle, John O'Donoghue, that's where I really pull on these deep spiritual seekers and healers beyond coaching, beyond neuroscience, beyond whatever, because that's what keeps me at the moment centered, and as well as my meditation and yoga practice. It just brings me back into that resonance of I can kind of handle anything because I have done the internal work of noticing my thoughts and allowing them to pass, not reacting to every impulse. And I'm at the very beginning stages of this journey, but as I see some of the fruits, it's exciting to follow that.
Yeah, geez, Brian, just thank you for sharing all that. I don't want to go on to another question without just, I know I've already to take some space to just allow that to kind of sink in for a moment. And your vulnerability is something that's very maybe admirable but inspiring, and to create boundaries and to know when to say no. And I think from like everyone's prone to some sort of human error. I was looking up the other day that I don't know if this is true or not, that Lionel Messi is probably one of the greatest of all time, but he only makes on any, I think 83.5% of his passes. And like, I know we're all prone to mistakes, but just learning to be able to say no and learning to create boundaries is just just thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And like, I'm human like everyone else. I am stumbling and fumbling my way through it, trying to be as conscious as possible. And as I learn, I share as much as I can. And yeah, I've learned the power and vulnerability in the right spaces. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no worries, Brian. We're coming up on nearly an hour now, so I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I'd love to know if someone's interested in learning about your services or to work with you, are you open to new clients at the moment? Can they reach out or?
Yeah, absolutely. Open to corporate workshops, one-on-one clients, opportunities to teach yoga and meditation. I'd love to run retreats eventually. I know we spoke before about bringing people walking for like a week on the Camino, but the best place people could find me is on my LinkedIn, Brian Kingston, and my Instagram is Brian Kingston. My website, which is currently being built, is Solace Wellness Coaching. You can also find me at essentialtraining.ie. That's my dad's business. And in the link in my bio of my Instagram has a link to my master's thesis where I wrote about the reintegration process from transformative life experiences like the Camino de Santiago. It's also got my 3 books of poetry. It's also got my YouTube channel, which has lots of my poems as well. So yeah, they're the main places people can find me.
Thanks, Brian. And I'd love to know one last thing before you go. And I've asked this on a number of times, different guests, and I must get a woman on the podcast. I haven't yet, so I must reach out and ask them, because I think it's only been lads at the moment. Or
we did 50 episodes of our podcast, and about 15 or 20 episodes in, one of our friends and clients, Ava, gave us a really good piece of feedback. She was like, it's very male dominated, so that inspired us to have a lot more women on the podcast, and we had amazing conversations. And So I think that's a good intention to set for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks. And I'd love to know if there's any piece of feedback or word of wisdom you'd give to your younger self. Maybe, I don't know whether that's on the under 20s or in school or as a kid, even younger, or even 5 years ago. Is there maybe one thing that stands out above anything else? It could be three things, but maybe one thing. Or
yes, I think one of the themes of this conversation is listening to our bodies. So, I mean, when I was speaking with Kaylin the other day, and I asked him, where do you feel when you feel nervous? You mentioned you feel nervous before a game. Where do you feel it? He was like, in my chest or my throat. And I was like, that's interesting. Mine has generally been in my stomach, sometimes my throat. So listening to my body and learning about my body, I would have loved to done that sooner. I'm glad I'm doing that now. And what messages is it giving me? Now, you can look at the chakra system. Oh, if your throat's blocked, maybe you need to communicate more. Or if your stomach is sore, maybe you're not accessing your power, the yellow and orange part of your solar plexus. Or the red root chakra, you're not feeling safe. Or maybe you're not eating the right foods and your stomach's sore. Or maybe you're not living a life aligned to you, so you're feeling anxious, so your stomach's sore. Or maybe you're actually really excited and you're just miscalibrating that, misnaming that as nerves. See all those different ways we can look at our body's messages. So I would ask myself to learn more and listen more to my body, and also listen more to myself. Trust more that if I don't feel good in an environment, I'm not the problem. There might be something going on with a person, with an environment, with a situation. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to leave that situation. It's okay to speak up. I do that all the time now. But it took me many years of pain and not listening to myself and not trusting myself and thinking I was oversensitive or that I was overthinking something. Now I go, oh, if I feel something, I'm going to trust that and I'm going to explore it. And maybe I voice it and maybe I'm wrong, but at least I got that out. So that's my lesson to my message to my younger self is trust yourself more, listen to your body more, and keep finding ways where you can understand yourself more. I'm very grateful I'm doing it now. A lot of me wishes I did it sooner. Same with giving up alcohol. It's been an amazing journey, and I just wish I did it sooner. So, there are some messages.
Appreciate that, Brian. I just want to give I just want to say this last 52 minutes or 53 minutes now has been one of my favorite episodes to date. I think your openness, your background and your openness and willing to speak upon subjects that could be challenging for younger men, even older men, or just men in general, or women. So I want to make sure everyone is included in this. I don't want to leave out anyone or make sure everyone's involved. And for the last 4 sessions, you've created a lot of psychological safety for me and to be vulnerable and to share. So I just want to say, again, thank you. It's not taken lightly, and with all gratitude, and looking forward to hopefully continue working together over the next while. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on today on the podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you for asking me. I really enjoyed it. The last 50 minutes flew. And so thank you. Well done for asking such great questions and setting it up really well. I felt like I could flow, which was really nice. Also, it's a privilege to work with you, and you're making amazing progress on your journey. So that's great to watch. And I'm excited to see where this goes. So thank you for having me on.
No worries, Brian. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and look forward to connecting in the next few weeks.
You too. Have a good one.
Thanks, Brian.